I am sitting down here and recording this video for now the 6th year in a row? Question mark? Gotta be honest, kind of shocked myself, surprised myself that I've actually done this for 6 years. I honestly thought at most I'd get about 2 years in, and then I would have so much shame that I would stop wheeling myself out here in front of a camera to talk and yap about my favorite games that I played this year. But despite all that shame, I'm here for a 6th year to, again, like I said, talk about my favorite games of 2024. I'm gonna stay super concise. We're not gonna get over an hour, I hope, talking about games. And we are going to follow the same similar format with a couple of changes to the last couple of years, because I love tinkering. Every year I gotta tinker with this video just slightly. Tinker, maybe not for the best, tinker for the worst, doesn't matter. Tinker for no change, just tinker. So let's start off with the basics. By my count, by my rough estimate, actual number, and then I had to add a couple for reasons, but as far as I can tell, I played and completed 48 games this year, which when I look at the number, it seems like a staggering number. I have to keep in mind that a lot of those are smaller games, games that I play in like one sitting, whatever the case is, or like if it's a roguelike game where you're supposed to play over and over and over and over and over, I basically just count it as if I played it enough, or got to an end screen at least once or whatever. So by my count, 48 games, which is quite higher than last year. So it's like I keep like going down and up. I think last year, if I'm remembering from my video correctly, because I was checking it earlier on a couple things, I think I said 28 last year. So that is close to 2 times, 1.75 times the amount, maybe. Don't check the math on that. That just sounds right to me. So 48 games. I will say in general, I feel like I played quite a bit higher quality tier games compared to last year. We'll get into something about that a little later, but yeah, I think I played overall, pound for pound, just a lot more higher quality games, I would say. Games that if you were to take a random sampling of from each year, these past 6 years that I've done a video like this, like, you would probably grab a handful of games from here and be like, oh, this is a good handful of games, is the best way I can put it. So as I do every year, as I start from the top, anytime I finish a game, and then I think that it could potentially be something I would consider at the end of the year, could potentially hang in a top 10 or at least get considered, I'll put it on this list. Don't freeze frame on that list, because then you'll spoil the rest of the video potentially. So then it gets to about a good handful. I think on this got to about, what is it? I think 30 games or so, where I was like, all right, this potentially I could consider may get into either top 10 territory or honorable mention territory. And then over the last like week, as of recording of this video, I get into my mind palace and I start weeding out games. This year, as opposed to last, I think 2 years, I'm bringing back, by no demand, honorable mentions. I actually have 12 honorable mentions and then the top 10. So the honorable mentions, it just feels, like I said earlier, I played enough higher quality games that I feel like leaving so much on the cutting room floor, and not giving them just the smallest of shout outs in an honorable mention section just felt like doing it dirty. So that's what we're gonna do there. Past rules still the same. This is not just games that came out in 2024. A lot of what this channel has been and will be for however long it ends up going as far as the project goes is me not only checking out games that come out throughout the year, but also going back, actually getting around to games that I had been meaning to play for years and years, or, you know, getting back and destroying that backlog is a big purpose and goal of this channel. So all games that were played for the first time this year are eligible. It's not like I generally replay games that I've played in my past, but you're not going to see, like, from this year, sorry, Crash Bash. You're not making any honorable mentions or top 10 lists this year, despite your best efforts. I've been saying this is the 6th year that I've done this. Let's recount the previous number ones on these lists. Starting in 2019. I first did a video like this in 2019, and I went back and watched it. Fucking rough video, man. Just me and I think my iPhone at the time, just on the ground, just recording something. But 2019 was Death Stranding. Great pick by me. Thank you. Thank you. 2020 Final Fantasy. I'm looking down at the list. 2020 Final Fantasy VII Remake. Great game. Great pick. 2021 Inscription. Great pick. 2022. I just say that about every game. 2022 Neon White. That's the one I always forget that I picked in 2022. I always am like, when I try to, if I just, without looking back, if I try to think about, like, what did I picked in 2022, I always forget. Neon White. I stand by it. 2023, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Now, I've talked about this. I've mentioned this just briefly. I don't ever mean to shit on my previous year picks. But I would say, and I stand by my pick for 2023, Marvel Spider-Man 2. But I will say, probably my top 5 games of this year could probably all clear Marvel Spider-Man 2 if I think about it hard. If I think about it enough, maybe. No, there's no dramaticism there. I stand by that. When we get to the top 10 and the top 5, I would say I would probably put those all above, just in quality and time spent with it, fun time spent with it, over Marvel Spider-Man. And that, like I said, just goes back to what I said. I think I played a lot more higher quality games this year compared to last year. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. So that's the last 5 years. We will soon see what joins this fabled list. The all-important Austin's Opinion top game of this year. So first, we're going to go through honorable mentions. Like I said, there's 12 here. I will hopefully just give a brief 1 or 2 sentence bit about each game, because like I said, this video is going to be too long if we have 12 honorable mentions and I just rattle too much about them. So the order that these are in are basically generally about just throughout the year, how I beat them, so they're not numbered, these 12, just starting at the top of the year and then kind of going down. Starting with Yakuza Kiwami. Finally got to the second game in the series, how I'm playing it. I played 0 several years back. But Yakuza Kiwami, still generally fun time. High drama story mixed with the zany mini games and all. Generally fun. There's a cute little girl in this one. She walks around with you. Love to see it. Still not the biggest fan of the brawling combat, if I'm being honest. It doesn't do it for me. Can't wait till we get to the RPG, turn-based RPG entries in the series. Maybe I'll catch up to that point in about the year 2040, assuming I'm still alive. I don't know. Second one, milk outside a bag of milk, outside a bag of milk, outside a bag of milk. And you can include with this milk inside a bag of milk as well. I played them both back to back this year, early this year. Don't want to spoil obviously too much. This goes through every game this year. I'm not going to really go into spoiler territory about any game. But for this, I'm going to stay pretty vague, but tight little narrative story, the two of them together, generally about dealing with mental illness and trying to live a day in the life and get through mundane tasks and what that's like. You know, again, kind of being quite vague about it, but I loved the presentation of both of those games. I love the vibe that they kind of bring. So yeah, Milk, outside a bag of milk. Repeating. Balatro is a third game, honorable mention. Maybe some people might be shocked that it's this low, or it's just in the honorable mentions. I think it was built excellently, and I can see the addictive kind of gameplay to it. It didn't hook me as much as I think it did a lot of people this year. I still play it a little bit. I'll check in every once in a while and just play a bit of it because it is solidly built. I think it's fine and decent enough. I don't think I got hooked on enough to make it breach into that top 10 for me this year. But really excellently and simple yet fun and addictive kind of gameplay loop that I can understand why it's a lot higher on a lot of other people's list. Fourth game, World of Horror. I finally was able to play enough, and the build that I play on console was patched enough this year that I feel confident enough now putting it on this list, and I avoided putting it on last year's list, even though I technically started playing it last year. World of Horror, type of game where I think I like its vibe and what it's doing a bit more than its actual fun to play moment to moment. I really like its presentation it's going for, and the creepiness factor, and how it's able to do that with, a limited art, scope, for lack of a better term, is how I'd put it. I really like everything around World of Horror. It is one of those types of games where you're gonna probably enjoy it a lot more if you love spending hours and hours and hours yourself figuring out how the different mechanics all intertwine and what the different random events that can possibly happen, or if you're the type of person that really likes going and spending hours reading like a wiki about how all the different things act and how to unlock things or whatever. If that's your type of jam, then you'll probably get a lot more out of World of Horror. But I like generally just doing like a run. It's a roguelike. Oh, I dropped my cap. I knew that would happen if I fiddle around with a pen. But yeah, if you enjoy just kind of spending hours being confused about certain events, but then seeing minor horror things, World of Horror should be for you. Next, fifth, Cryptomaster. Cryptomaster? It's not Cryptomaster. I wrote Cryptomaster. It's just Cryptmaster. It's not about crypto. Cryptmaster. Interesting game that blends old school dungeon crawling with RPG and word puzzles. The story there in the game is not going to blow you away, but I very much appreciate going through this game. Like I said, I'm a word puzzle. Word puzzles are fun. Everyone loves word puzzles. That you blend, it's like a mix of like Wheel of Fortune, but then also little riddles. If you like riddles, if you like the scene where that one guy and Golem are saying riddles back and forth, I think that happened. I don't think I'm making that up. I think that happened. And they're taking turns guessing, answering riddles and stuff. There's moments like that where you go up to a thing and then it'll give you a riddle, and then you have to think about it, and then you have to type out a riddle. It's generally a pretty fun game though. Talos Principle, finally got around to Talos Principle. I will commend it that I like how they were able to have a lot of variance in puzzles despite only being a small handful of actual different items that interact with walls or lasers and all this kind of thing. I'm gonna be 100% honest. While I thought some of the narrative in the Talos Principle is interesting, some of it just didn't really jive with me for different reasons that I would definitely go over more if it reached into my top 10. But yeah, it was decent enough. Puzzles were fine. There were a couple puzzles where I was like, and like honestly, I don't want to sound like a lame puzzle person, but like the difficulty and the obtuseness of some of the extra puzzles that you could do in that game kind of turned me away from wanting to even try and attempt them, because it just, to me, didn't feel great. But maybe that's just a skill issue or something. After that is Rollerdrome. Rollerdrome, very cool arcadey. You're skating around on roller skates, shooting guys, just racking up a ton of chain, going through an interesting little story. Doesn't overstay its welcome as far as story mode goes. One of those types of games, and it'll be the one of two here in the honorable mentions, that just makes you feel really fucking cool as you play and you're nailing certain combos and you're getting this thing and getting high scores. Arcade experience, good pick. Bummer that the dev team was disbanded a while back. After that is Yars Rising. I'm a sucker for bright, colorful environments with bright, colorful characters. I thought that they were just slurring through my words there. I thought that they were a lot of fun. A soundtrack that to this day I still fucking listen to quite a bit. The soundtrack actually exactly landed where I would want it to be. Very interesting hacking little mini games throughout. I was actually mightily impressed with just how every time I rolled up to one of the little hacking mini game sections, just every time you go to it, none were exactly the same. With every time they would tweak a little rule set or a little thing that would make it so that a little inhibitor basically of like, oh, you can't use this, or you have to do this, or these things are going faster, or just how frequently that changed to where every time you rolled up to a hacking station, you didn't know what to expect and it was going to feel different each time. And then some decent-ish light Metroidvania moments in between all that were fine and serviceable enough. Like I said, the story didn't wow me necessarily. You kind of see easy where it was going, halfway through or whatever. But yeah, I liked a lot of things about that. Next is Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. Finally got around to Ghost Trick. Everyone wanted me to play Ghost Trick. I thought it was decent. Puzzles didn't really do it for me. To me, it just, again, maybe skill issue or whatever, but to me, they just seem like trial and error, mostly environmental puzzles. Oh, if I hit this, what's it gonna do? Oh, the little ball will move, and then, oh, the ball is gonna move. Okay, well then I gotta have the ball move before this moves, and so I'll reset and then click this and then click this. A lot of trial and error. The puzzles themselves didn't really feel satisfying, but the story was pretty decent, and I loved a lot of the characters. The characterization in this game, outstanding. I can tell why people really latched onto this game in that DS era that it came out originally on, because it just fits so much with where games were at that time. And like I said, handheld wise, coming off of like around like the Phoenix Wright obviously era, and then transitioning into that, it just makes a lot of sense why people really, maybe nostalgia wise, really love that game. Slay the Princess, the Pristine Cut. Finally got around to this. It was the 1 year anniversary and they did the Pristine Cut, a much more deluxe edition if you want to call it. More routes, more endings or whatever. I'm a sucker for visual novels. Obviously, I like visual novels. I also like visual novels that then use the visual novel genre to its advantage to try to do some, again, non-spoiler things, but wacky things about, the nature of visual novels, and also to have like a meta level to their narrative. I had a lot of fun with this game. The way it attempts to wrap up one of your runs, because it's like a visual novel, but like almost like a visual novel with a roguelite experience where you're going down different paths depending on what you choose. It's kind of like a weird meshing if you think about it like that. But the way it does its ending, I get why it does it, but it just doesn't feel satisfying enough. It's kind of weird. And then once I beat it once, the game does a thing where at first I thought I originally really wanted it. It presents, at least in this Pristine Cut, like not checklist, but like it keeps track like you would with any kind of roguelike or something, or if you're someone who wants to see everything it possibly has to give you. It gives you this checklist thing where it's like, oh, you've seen this one, and here's the still image of when you saw this, and so you could collect and see every little thing and every little kind of princess in that. And I thought that's something I wanted, but then it was simultaneously not clear enough about how to get certain things. Like they try to be vague and give you little hints, and then also too revealing in a weird way. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but like this checklist thing just didn't nail exactly what I wanted it to do somehow, to the point where it didn't feel great then doing subsequent runs for whatever reason. I did a couple just to see some different routes and stuff, but for some reason, like it simultaneously just didn't do enough that I wanted to do and did too much somehow. I don't know. It was weird because halfway through I was like, hey, I hope this game has like a cool way to check what you're doing and what you've seen or whatever, because then you start going through subsequent runs, and as far as I could tell, it doesn't like guardrail you into not picking the same things over again. So again, it is what it is. You could go online and probably find routes to do certain things or whatever, and maybe that'd be easier, but that's not exactly how I want to approach the game like that. So yeah, honorable mention there. I think honorable mention game number 11, Rose and Camellia Collection. It is a collection of, from what I think, and I understand if I remember the history correctly, a collection of older Flash games from back in the day, called Rose and Camellia, and then 2 and 3 and whatever their subtitles were, where think Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but instead of boxing, it's like high society ladies slapping each other. Cartoony, obviously. Was a lot of fun. It's a quick play. I played on the Switch, so you play by waggling controllers and doing different motions with it to like guard and stuff. So that was a little fun. I did love the humor of it. It exponentially, not exponentially, but sequentially each game kept ratcheting up the humor and took it just enough where it wasn't too absurd to be obnoxious, but the humor did level up each time you play through the next game to where the scenario or who you're playing as or why they're doing a certain thing. It's ranking up of humor throughout each game and the absurdity just enough to where you're like, oh, this is very funny, and then you go through the next game and you're like, what's the weird thing that's going to happen here? So Rose and Camellia Collection is that. And then finally, the last honorable mention game, Fury. I've mentioned how Roller Drome earlier made you feel cool playing. Fury did just that as well. Not super long. It is a boss rush type game where you're just going from boss to boss, basically, with a little bit of narrative sprinkled in between each level. Limited move set, but the way that moveset interacts with the boss in each level was actually really clever, because then they were able to change how the boss interacts with you and the environment that you're battling them. Again, no spoilers or anything, but it was just, there's like 8 or so bosses, and each one felt super fresh, even though your moveset isn't very wide. The way they interact with you kept things fresh. Weird little thing where like halfway through the game, I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but halfway through the game, if you do a certain thing, there's like an alternate ending, and then what it does is it just kicks you, if you got to that ending, it'll kick you back down to the beginning of the game. And if you do it, there's no like necessarily any warning to that being the case or whatever. I don't know why. It was kind of like maybe like the weirdest little game decision that happened to me this year, as far as playing a game. But thank God that I was able to just pull like a cloud save to like fix it and then go back, because I wouldn't want to have to go back and do the bosses. Not like it would have been the worst thing, but it would have been just like a waste of time. And then that's like half the game. You wouldn't have seen half the game if that's like the ending you got, and then you just were like a person who's like, well, I'm not going to replay the first half of the game. It was a weird thing, a weird decision. I get wanting to do like an alternate ending. And like I said, probably most people won't even see that. I actually ended up seeing it accidentally in a weird way. So like maybe that's just on me. But yeah, that was a weird thing. Glad I was able to see the second half of the game and I didn't just give up there. So yeah, Fury, very cool. It's time to get into the meat and potatoes of the video here. The official top 10 list that no one will have any disagreements with me on. Again, hoping that we don't go too long into the games this year. Again, no spoilers either. I'll go from bottom to top because that just makes sense. This will be the top 10 of games played this year by me. Number 10 is Chants of Sennaar. Puzzle game all about language. Finally got around to playing it this year and had a great time with it. The type of game that constantly will make you feel clever when a little symbol you see that's been bugging you for hours and hours, wondering what it means and what you would translate to your language as. Something I didn't know before going into it that is, but now makes a ton more sense, is that there's like a bunch of different languages in the game, and the clever thing that it does is that you go from for lack of a better term, world to world to world. You see these different languages, and then you're tasked with not only translating it to the language of the character that you're playing as, but then you're getting the language with this world and this world and this world, and by the end of the game, you've got these 4 languages all basically hooked up and daisy chained together, where you're tasked with making sentences with all these different symbols. Weird decision to have stealth section moments in the game. They're not too frequent, but when they did pop up, it was always kind of bizarre to me, because you wouldn't think like a puzzle game where you're translating languages then would task you with sneaking past a guard or something like that. Again, I can maybe count on a few fingers on one hand the amount of times it actually made me do that. So, but yeah, just weird decision on that, but they weren't too difficult. I don't think I remember them being too difficult, but it is weird how you're like, hey, let's squeeze a gameplay moment out of this game that is very much clearly a puzzle game. But yeah, a game that constantly made you feel great when you filled in. It did the satisfying thing where you could guess what a certain symbol means and you would write it in, and then it wasn't until you get like a handful and then it'll like lock in if you're correct, which is nice. Stream wise, made me feel kind of bad when I misspelled something, or I was having an Austin moment of dumbness. But you know what? I kept at it. I don't think I was that bad at the game, if I'm being 100% honest. I'm coping there. But yeah, super fun game. Very chill puzzle game that, again, super satisfying once you've solved every word or every symbol as a word or something, and ending too. It just made you feel on top of the world as far as language goes. Number 9 is Zenless Zone Zero. That's right, a gacha game from the Hoyoverse team made it into my top 10. It would feel disingenuous for me for reason to not put this game in the top 10. It does get into number 9 on my list. It's technically a game that since it released, I've played a little bit, at least every day, just checking in, doing things. It does the whole live service gacha game thing where you're just incentivized to check in every day, just play a little bit. As far as I can tell of the Hoyoverse games, online sentiment seems to be that this is the most chill one, and less demanding as far as time goes and whatever, which is exactly the type of thing I want. I've never played a game like Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail, I believe it's called. So this was my first venture into this type of game with them. A couple years back, I've talked about it before, but I was really, I always say that I'm always only have the brain capacity and the time capacity to squeeze one gachapon-like game into my playing habits. A couple years back, or 2 or 3 years back, I was really into a game on mobile called World Flipper. That game ended up, after spending a couple years with it, ended up messaging out like, this is going to be our end of service kind of rollout thing. Unfortunately, I was really bummed. I had spent, like I said, a lot of time into World Flipper. Thankfully, not a lot of money. Thankfully, not any money. It was a game I was just playing free to play. But once I got that, like, hey, we're going to be ending the game as of this date, I kind of like rolled off of it. I was like, well, I don't feel great putting any amount of time into this if it's just a game that's just going to, cease to exist after a little bit of time. So around that time, like I said, it was like 2 years or so, they started doing the marketing for Zenless Zone Zero. And I remember seeing it and it being like an action game that looked really polished, and I really loved the art style and everything, the animation style. I was like, well, maybe I just don't pick up one immediately, a new gacha game, to fill that void for me, and I'll just wait till this game releases. And so then I ended up waiting, like I said, around probably like 2 years for the game to actually come out. And like I said, since it's come out, I've put in quite a bit of time. It's not very demanding. It's very chill. I love just having a solid little collection aspect that's that satisfies that itch in your brain of like, oh, I want to collect things and mark off things off the list and do all these things. It has some action gameplay stuff, so that's ends up being fun. It's But if you're not good at it, or you're not willing to sink like a ton of hours or a ton of money into it, you don't need to be good necessarily. And like I said, it's extremely polished. I should say, monetization wise, it sucks that a game of this high quality is stuck behind a naturally inherently for lack of a better term, evil monetization scheme, inherently addictive to certain people that are more likely to spend a ton of time or a ton of money into it. So it's kind of unfortunate that that's a reality of it. So I say all this saying that I'm not the type of person that gets addicted to games like this to the point where I'm maxing out credit cards to try to get certain characters or whatever the case. Like I don't have that in me. Thankfully, if I did, I probably wouldn't want to play a game such as this for my own well-being. So yeah, it's unfortunate that a game of this high quality and polish is stuck behind this kind of inherently evil monetization scheme, if I'm being 100% honest. But like I said, it is highly polished. Animation, cutscenes, voiceover work. Again, it knows that it doesn't need to be super demanding of your time. You can, like I said, just check in daily and you're getting everything you want to do out of it, especially if you're mostly a free-to-play player like me. It's got a lot of fun things to do. And like I said, I've played it every day since release around midpoint year this year, maybe a little later than that. But constantly update with different events, story bits. They just wrapped up like the big first like story arc kind of thing. Again, interesting story, fun characters, high quality, unfortunate monetization, but enough to make it number 9 on my list. Number 8 is Cyberpunk 2077. They finally fixed the game enough to get me to play it. I always say that I had actually a hard copy of the game at launch, but because of the problems that the game had, I decided to shelf it and come back to it at a later point, which ended up being towards the end of this year. I had a lot of time. It's one of those RPG experiences where I felt, as lame as it makes me sound, I actually had a lot of fun role playing through the game, my character, doing certain things, and me figuring out like, hey, how would my V respond or do this, or would I take this mission, or would I have this kind of weapon, or how would I build out my character stat wise based on what I thought my V character was. I ended up spending a lot of time with it. I think I did pretty much almost every side mission and side job and branching path thing that I could do. Obviously I only got one ending because I don't feel the need to go see multiple different endings, but yeah, at this point that the game was at, its post like 2.0 update to the game, as far as I could tell, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much if I was trying to play it while it was both broken, buggy, and underdeveloped and undercooked as far as their inner systems go, as far as RPG wise. But I had a lot of fun running around throwing knives at people, sneaking around, driving around. Never felt the need to fast travel because, again, role-playing wise, it just felt good to just kind of go around the city. Highly polished. Like I said, great that I finally played it now that it was up to this kind of standard. Keanu Reeves is fun. His character, I thought the arc that we had with, or what Keanu Reeves was actually going to be, I thought it was going to be a lot different, but ended up being a fun sidekick character throughout the whole thing. And yeah, like I said, I got a lot of mileage out of it because I was playing quite a bit of it as far as hours wise, doing so many different things. So Cyberpunk, number 8. Number 7 is the visual novel Experience, Higurashi When They Cry. Last year dipped into Umineko When They Cry, then went backwards this year to do the story prior to Umineko, Higurashi. There will be a lot of discussion probably here quickly. Again, no spoilers or anything, but just the differences I felt between Umineko and Higurashi in a bit. but Higurashi is a visual novel about a group of school kids who have a little club and they do little games and nothing crazy happens at all. There it is. That's at the end. No, and then shenanigans happens, and it evolves and devolves into a wild story of conspiracies and yada yada yada. Lots of characters, lots of things happening. Naturally, kind of like I said, the comparison you'd probably want to make is I think Umineko from last year got higher. Again, I think I played more higher quality games this year in general, but also I think if I had to put the two together, I think I probably had more overall fun time with Umineko. I think family drama setting on an island of a rich family and the more fantastical elements in Umineko probably interests me more just in general. And I think you could just naturally draw the conclusion that Higurashi came out first and then Umineko after, and you'd think Ryukishi, the writer and everything, probably felt more confident or, had that, the time to expand on not a direct sequel, but a sequel to that type of game. But this game has a lot of stuff that Umineko also has as far as solid music, solid art, little moments. The story is good. I genuinely felt for a lot of these characters throughout this thing. A type of thing that keeps you guessing till the very end. You would think early on some characters are definitely going to be one note and just, not be important later on, but then they end up being important and you're like, oh, and then like the next chapter, again, I'm staying vague story-wise. I'm not going to spoil any plots or anything, but like then you get to the next chapter and you're like, some things are revealed that you thought you were so confident about in a previous chapter, but then you're seeing it through a different light and you're like, oh, that's so crazy. Definitely more grounded. Like I said, Umineko is more fantastical as far as its presentation and what it's doing. This one's a bit more grounded. But despite that, still some wacky, crazy, batshit insane moments. This is a bit more on the horror side, you would probably say. I remember that being the pitch to me, compared to Umineko. Even though Umineko had its moments, obviously. Higurashi, you feel more dread playing. I felt more dread playing certain moments. Yeah, Higurashi, still super solid. It's only this low because, like I said, I think I played a lot of higher quality games this year. Umineko I probably enjoyed just slightly more compared to Higurashi, but it ended up, again, as the type of game that was then played constantly throughout this year. I started around March or something and just chipped away. It's a lot of reading on stream I did for this game throughout the year, and only actually finished it, I think, a couple weeks back. Yeah, Higurashi, solid. I now that I've read both, I wonder, like, would I recommend people do what I did and read Umineko first and then Higurashi, or Higurashi then Umineko? I probably would say, like, don't do it like me. If you're gonna read both, probably read Higurashi first, then go to Umineko. If you're gonna read just one for whatever reason, I'd probably recommend Umineko, just because, like I said, I think overall the experience is better. But yeah, solid entry there for number 7. Number 6 this year, another puzzle game. A year of puzzle games. Something that just squeaked in at the end of the year here that I got around to. Probably the last game I finished. Return of the Obra Dinn. This game was super solid. The type of puzzle game that, again, makes you feel super smart once you figure out a couple things. Again, just like Chances Sonar, funnily enough, does the thing where you lock in like 3 answers at a time and then it will like tell you that you're right about something. You go around IDing and identifying what transpired to a bunch of people on the Obra Dinn ship over the course of a trip. Both who they are, how they died, and who killed them, whether it is a person, an illness, themselves, a monster of certain sorts. The type of game that I constantly probably felt so stupid playing, but as a testament to the strength of the type of puzzle game, I think it makes a lot of sense that if a puzzle game is really hard for someone and pushes back, and you're constantly like, I don't know what to do next, I don't know how to approach this next situation, I don't know how to do any of this, but you constantly keep wanting to play it and trying different things, I think that speaks to the strength of the type of puzzle game it is. Really cool art style that commits to this very I don't even know what you'd call it. Is it 1-bit like art presentation style? Really clever sound design that helps you solve certain puzzles. Every scene that you dive into these memories to try to solve the puzzle and solve who these people are when you basically don't have anything. Every scene is basically what seems like painstakingly crafted to give just the right type of clues and hints that you need to ID certain people or their situations, or you follow through memory to memory over the course of like a stretch of scenes to like actually try to ID these people. And like I said, I probably, if you were watching me, probably came across as really bad at the game, but despite all that, despite my best efforts, I still succeeded and solved everything on my own there, just because, like I said, it was so well crafted that you have the everything at your disposal that you need to solve every little nook and cranny. And like I said, a wide variance of just of things, of ways to tackle a certain issue. You can solve a thing one way, and then you could be like me and solve it a different way that makes no sense to most people and is not the common way they wanted you to solve a thing, but it is the way to solve it for my brain, so I'm fine with solving it like that. And it could seem batshit insane, but that's totally fine because they've incorporated like multiple ways of solving certain things. And I'm saying all this and ranting like this because I don't want to give away any spoilers or hints or anything, but yeah, really cleverly built, and many moments throughout it when the light bulb, metaphorical light bulb, went over my head. Man, does that feel good. Man, does it feel good. Number 5 is Tunic. The puzzle games just keep coming and coming. Puzzle game mixed with isometric Zelda-like running around, slashing enemies kind of thing. Super fun time with this. Game I probably should have played long ago. Finally got around to playing this year. Again, a game that'll constantly, when you see or reveal a secret, or you find that a certain path was always connected to certain routes, just so cleverly built to have those little tiny moments of satisfaction where you're like, oh, I didn't expect it to be like this. I didn't think that this would connect to this, both spatially and puzzly. How else to describe it? So yeah, having a lot of those moments where it intentionally built to make you, the player, be like, oh, I'm so stupid for not seeing that before, but I'm sure it's built like that intentionally. So, and that happening constantly over and over, on top of the regular gameplay of being like, oh, it's cool, I'm going against a boss and I gotta dodge roll and I gotta sword slash and all that. Ends up being a nice little mix. I solved a lot of the puzzles at some point. There was like the game has like different tiers of puzzles. Like you fit tier 1, and then your tier 2 of when you're like finishing the game, you're like, oh, there's a deeper thing. And then there's like tiers 3, 4, and like 5 where you start getting to like ARG territory, and you're like, I at some point I had to back out and be like, this is not really for me. But definitely had one of my favorite probably moments on the stream, where I was going insane trying to figure out what the hell, and again, this isn't spoiler, but if you've played Tunic, you know what I'm talking about, what notches meant. And I had a moment where I was driving myself insane, and I would just sit there on stream for probably hours and hours just looking at these lines. And then finally, while I was working one day, I then was looking at these lines when I should have been working maybe. And but I was like, what is this, what does this mean? And then like just immediately came to me, and just the panic I felt when I finally got it. And it was this thing that was bugging me, and it should have been something that was so easily solvable and figure it outable prior. But yeah, maybe has my favorite moment in games this year. Just that one little moment of solving something that should have been so simple, and finally just like opening my mind just slightly, like my eyelids just opened just slightly more, and I just a little more light come into my retinas, and then the puzzle solution was solved there, and it was great. So yeah, Tunic, number 5. All right, we reached top 4. All these are categorically the big boys of this year. And number 4 is going to be Astro Bot. Very solid, decent platformer from Sony and PlayStation. Even taking away the nostalgia bait stuff of the game with all the little costumes and all the different robots you can collect. Just overall super solid and fun. Very satisfying platform feel to the whole game. Every level constantly making you do different things, different upgrades, different environments, different whatever. Just charmingly built. Being able to leverage certain Sony IP so that certain levels are built to mimic or invoke certain types of games. I won't spoil anything, but there's like a couple reveals where you're like, oh wow, I can't believe they actually wanted to do a level based on this kind of thing or this kind of game. Obviously there are some that are very obvious as far as how they were built and also the importance of the IP to Sony. But yeah, Astrobot, very fun. Platformers always will be an important genre to me. Growing up, obviously to me, platforming, I know a lot of people have like, especially around my age, the platformers were Mario and I don't know, DK, or even like Banjo-Kazooie. To me, platforming was the Sony consoles back in the day, so it was Crash and Spyro, of course. So naturally, I love Astrobot. Again, one of those games that's like, you can tell just how lovingly crafted it was and how every intentional decision being made and put into it. Solid music, solid platforming feel, walking around. Again, much like the demo that was coming in with the PS5s, just the tactile feel of the controller for every little step that your character takes or every jump he goes off on. I don't have any real criticisms. There is a small part of me that's like, I'm not like a punishing game fiend or anything, but there are, towards the end of the game, they do a couple of like slightly more difficult levels. I could totally stand to have more of those types of levels or even more difficult levels, just because I like not that I like dying over and over, but if I had the slightly more punishing or slightly more difficult levels, when you have a platformer that feels so well and so fun to play and interact with, you kind of wish there was just a little more. I think we've been kind of getting, and I think they've said that they want to do more challenging levels as like downloadable stuff into 2025, so here's hoping. But yeah, Astrobot, a very solid number 4. Any other year, Astrobot could totally be number 1, and it probably will be number 1 on a lot of people's lists this year. I mean, it won top game at the Jeff Keighley's award show thing, much to my shock, honestly. But that shocked just because I didn't think people would actually want to pick it, if I'm being 100% honest. But yeah, Astrobot, super solid. Number 4, loved that game. Number 3 for me, and a game that's going to be very hard to talk about, and I'm going to have to be very vague about it, and I don't want to spoil it, and it's one of those things. And I hope by the end of the year, more people give this a shot. I hope more people play it. I hope more people experience it. It's one of those games. It's 1,000 Times Resist. Interesting, very interesting. Visual not really visual novel though. Calling it a visual novel is not even accurate. Sci-fi story that originally puts out, hey, there was this calamity that happened. Your main protagonist girl survived it. Then there's a bunch of clones. It's really hard to go into this game without spoiling anything, because it's one of those, I generally, I think it's overused a lot, but it is very much true that it's the type of game that's the best going in knowing as little about it as possible. What I will say about this game is there were genuinely moments throughout this game where I had to put down the controller and I was like speechless. I went back a couple moments during my playthrough on stream where I'm just like utterly like, I don't even know what to say. Because I was like, as dramatic as it sounds, I was just overcome with feelings and emotions where I'm just like, I can't 100% process this as I should. Like, it was just both, you start off, it's split, they're very almost definitive, like first half of the game and then the second half of the game where something happens. But the first half, you're left confusing, questioning, and wondering what you're seeing and what is real, what you're being fed, and what does this mean, and what does this mean? And then the second half starts hitting, and then it's like chapter after chapter is just beating you with this, like, these reveals, and emotions just overflowing. It's been said to death and talked to death about this game if you've ever heard other people talk about this game. But it is a first game effort by a dev team composed of a bunch of artists from a bunch of other disciplines, artistic disciplines, and it really shows. You know, our video games art debate and discussion is really tired and dumb at this point in life, but like the way the game is both. So it's made by a dev team with a bunch of different disciplines of art that could not do or participate in those things, those disciplines, during like the pandemic times. And so they got together and were like, let's make a game. And it's so evident when you start playing just how that is. Like, the way the game is so intentionally lit and staged, like it's a stage play, or camera angles, the way character models, the way they move or don't move during certain sections, and how like the dialogue unrolls itself and between characters, and it's just so like, I think people talk about like, oh, it's made by people who this is their first time making a video game, and they do a bunch of other different art disciplines and everything. I think people keep bringing that up and talk about it because A, it's very interesting origin for making a game, but B, it's so easy to be seen once you know that that's in the back of your head. You're like, oh, this very clearly makes sense that like this is someone who looks at the space around of an art thing, and like, this is how this should be framed, and this is how it should be lit. And it's one of those games, man, again, don't want to say too much, don't want to spoil too much, but a game that just constantly, intentionally, you're going to be confused throughout the first half. That's by design. Second half, there are certain moments that just floored me, both emotionally and physically, I guess, mentally. It's one of those games that's hard because it's number 3 on my list, and as much as I would love to recommend it to a lot of people, I know that there's a general public out there that would not vibe with the game or not get out as much as I got out with the game, or as people that would get as much out of the game as some people did. It's definitely one of those games that is going to, unfortunately, your mileage is going to vary, kind of thing. It does have certain, it touches upon certain subjects of certain things that I feel like to some people it's just not going to emotionally hit them as much, or whatever the case is. Unfortunately, and I say that extremely as unfortunately as it is. But there are certain subjects. It touches a lot. There's a wide range of, like, again, subjects, things that it talks about, that it discusses, that it approaches, that it goes over things. So it's interestingly a wide net of different things that could be that are touched upon by it. And then, most importantly, again, I'm not spoiling anything by saying this, but you go through this whole emotional journey, and then the final chapter, the ending, starts doing a thing in video games where generally I don't think it's pulled off well. And I was like, oh, it's going to do this thing, and it's going to require me to do this thing, and then it's not going to hit so well, and I was going to be bummed that the ending was just not going to land or whatever. No, immediately, again, I got to the ending, and then I just had to sit there and just think. I was just thinking for a long time, and I'm like, I can't believe this game is making me do this, or is presenting stuff like this. And it again, pulled it off extremely well, and I was expecting it not to pull it off well, but it did. And again, this, I don't want to grade on like a curve for it being a first game effort by a dev team or anything like that. I'm not doing that. This is just one of those games that, again, I will be thinking about for a long time, maybe even longer. We'll get into it a bit, but like, as far as like emotional impact, it'll stick with me for years and years and years, most likely. So yeah, fascinating game. I'm so glad I ended up playing it, because I remember at the time when it came out, a lot of people, I didn't hear a lot of talking about it or anything like that. I think as the year has gone on and more people have said, like, you have to check this out this game for this year, I think more and more people are actually experiencing it, which is a good thing. But I remember even at the time when it came out, because I played it pretty close to release, if I'm not mistaken, and at the time I remember finishing it and wanting to find like discussions online from people playing it, and like, it was, at the time, it was like few and far between. I'm like, ah, damn. So seeing that ball kind of roll a bit more as the year has gotten closer to finishing is really good. I think more people should play it. Highly recommend it. I think I played it on PC. I think it's on Switch as well. As far as I understand, it runs well on Switch from what I hear. So highly recommend. 1,000 times resist. Throughout the whole year, I kept going, is it 1,000 times resist? 1,000x resist? 1,000... I think it's 1,000 times resist, but if it's supposed to be known as 1,000x resist, I apologize. Just substitute in your mind every time I'm saying 1,000 times. 1,000x just sounds worse to me. So, yeah, 1,000 times resist, my number 3 game. My number 2 game, and it's very hard for me not to put it at least this high, is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. As I said at the top of this list, at the very start, Final Fantasy VII Remake back in 2020 was my number 1 game of that year. This game similarly getting really high up on my list for good reason. Wow, that game is a lot. This isn't me saying that obviously because this is number 2 and Remake was better because it was number 1 in 2020 or whatever. This game, more of the same that we got in Remake, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. It's more of the same, but also just took everything and exponentially just increased it, both in depth, but also like just there's so much. It's like one of those games where you, as you're playing it and as I'm playing it, I'm like, I can't believe this as a product exists, because when you look at it and you go, this probably took so much time and so much effort and so much money to make. You just marvel at like like what people can pull off in a video game sense as like a package. I don't even know where to begin. I probably don't need to talk about it a bunch. It's the second of the trilogy of Final Fantasy VII Remake games. I feel like by the time Remake, the first game, wrapped up in 2020 and its ending concluded, I was like, very cool. I love where this ended. I love how the things it revealed as an ending. I love where we're going into the second one, this one. And then Rebirth came out and its ending happened, and I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea what we're doing for the third one. I trust the top people, scenario writers. I trust that it's going to work out in the end. It was intentionally, I think they've done interviews, and I think the general consensus is it was intentionally left nebulous, left confusing. They've gone on the record and they said, hey, number 3 is going to be massive story-wise. Like, it's going to be fucking fantastic. And I trust them. It's one of those things where the ending was so nebulous and so kind of like just fell just a teeny bit flat to me for different reasons. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything or whatever. But to the point where it's like, all right, retroactively, if they pull it off and nail story-wise what happens in 3 and 2 led well into that, then retroactively I'd be like, all right, 2's ending is fine for me. But if you're the type that's like, oh, I hate that the cliffhanger ending to 2 is just like, it's just confusion, and people are like, what the fuck is happening, and what are we, you know, if you're susceptible to that, then I could totally see seeing the ending of 2 and being like, this is kind of wonk. But this game, again, probably another solid soundtrack. I mean, I feel like every game in my top 10 is just like soundtrack. I keep repeating over and over, but this game, the amount of music it has is insane. It's one of those games where like there's like 100 tracks or whatever, and then every track has a different composition to it. It has in town, like these are just random, I'm just making things up, but like it has a town version of the song, and then it has a battle version of the song. So if you're just walking around and they're doing the song, and there's like bow wow wow, bow wow wow, because you're following a dog to some random side quest thing, and then like and then some monsters pop up, and then it's like it starts like picking up the pace, but it's still going like bow wow wow as you're like fucking fighting these things. And it's so like, it's one of those things where each track has like multiple forms, because it contextualizes what's happening on the screen and where you're at, and then adapts the song. So you're just like, how can it's just this must have been like, I can't believe just how deep this goes. People I know probably weren't as big a fan of, for lack of a better term, the bloat in the game, as far as just how much there was to do, both on story wise. It's already a long, super long game if you're just mainlining it, and then there's just Square was like, hey, let's make it open world like, and have a bunch of different mini games. I didn't really mind it, because not only if I ultimately wanted to, I didn't have to do it. Not only did I not have to do it, but every time I did it, I was rewarded, both in story and obviously items wise. But like every side mission, it felt like there was, at the very least, a little payoff of expanding a character's backstory, or revealing something about characters that are no longer in the game, or, you know, again, being vague, but like no side mission didn't feel good to do. Like it wasn't like I did a side mission, I'm like, oh, that was unfun, oh, and then there was no payoff to it. Like, they did such an excellent job of incorporating, deepening characters and the story and the universe that they're building in this remake Final Fantasy VII, and what we already know of Final Fantasy VII story, to where you're constantly being rewarded, again, both materially and story-wise, when you complete certain things. So I loved searching every nook and cranny, doing every little mission. Again, people talk about like Queen's Blood was a super well built, quick card game, all built within Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It had its own basically side quest chain attached to it that was constantly running parallel to the main storyline, to the point where basically again, no spoilers, but pays off to basically storyline that's like, I swear, is ripped out of like a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh anime arc, if I'm being honest. This game, just, again, you look at it and just its scope. It's one of those games that just has what seemingly an infinite scope to it, and you're like, this A is too big that it shouldn't exist. Like, it shouldn't exist. They shouldn't have gone this deep into it. But also, like, it shouldn't exist. Like, it's unreal. Just how big and massive it is. And it's hard for me not to put it at least at 2 here, because it, again, is super fun. It's more of that first game too. So the combat is super satisfying. It's action with, you can basically pause to put in commands, and again, you can tinker around that as far as accessibility. If you're like, oh, I want time to complete freeze as I'm doing certain actions or whatever. It's just, again, super solid. Hopefully we don't have to wait super long for the third game. And like I said, story-wise, I'm hoping that the third game pays off where a lot of people felt maybe left in the dark at the ending of 2, or perhaps being like, how exactly is this going to land as far as story-wise. I'm hoping it pays off, honestly. And I had a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time with it. My only biggest complaint, and it's such a nitpicky thing, and it's just like for me, but the end post-game, there were some post-game challenges that were just so unfun to do that I ultimately like gave up on, which is kind of a bummer. Again, I could have just spent hours and hours and trying, bashing my head against the wall. I wish it was just, honestly, I wish, unlike Astrobot, where I was like, man, I wish there were some levels that were more difficult as far as platform wise. There were some really unfun final post-game challenges things in Rebirth where I'm like, I wish they kind of, it wasn't like this necessarily. So I kind of ended up giving up on those, and that made me feel bad. But yeah, other than that, again, that's such a small little nitpicky thing. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the number 2 game. So now the number 1 game, and the game I'll probably speak the most about, just because I will be on my metaphorical hands and knees begging more people to play this game, and that is Nosia. Nosia. I don't think it's Gnosia, but it's spelled Gnosia, Gnosia. It is both on PC and Switch, so you don't have any excuse. Play this fucking game. Nosia is my number 1 game. What a fucking game. What a fucking game. I played this like towards the top of this year. It was a game I want to say it came out in 2023, but maybe 2022, something around that. And there was like a small, like the smallest voice of an online person I know that was recommending people play this game. And I was like, finally I got around to starting it at the beginning of this year, and man, am I glad. I'm on my fucking hands and knees. People need to play this game. People need to play Nosia. All right? Play Nosia. Play Nosia. I'm standing up to try to emphasize my point. Play Nosia. Nosia is mostly a visual novel game, but it is also a social deduction hidden role game. And before you're like, oh, Austin, that's bad, I don't want that. Also, before I get too much into it, just wonder, and I've said this out loud, and I've already had to cut one, or I know I'm cutting it out in the future. Guess how many times I say accidentally social seduction instead of social deduction. It happens constantly when I try to say social deduction, social seduction, whatever. Before you're like, Austin, that's such a big turnoff. If you're generally like me, if this is your mindset when someone says a social deduction or like a hidden role game, if you're like me, this is your thought process when someone says that. If someone's like, hey, who wants to play one of these types of games with me? If you're like me, the mindset is, oh, that I like the idea of a hidden role game, and you know, in concept that would be super interesting, super fun, but like you have to play with the right amount of people and the right mindset of people, and then you have to play with people that make it fun, and people have to be trying, you know, hard enough to try to win, but don't try too hard, because then it's unfun for a certain group of people when people try to go too hard. And some people have to commit to it, and if people don't commit to it, then it's not fun. And then you have some people not trying, and then some people act weird about. Cut all that out, because this is a single player social deduction game. This game, like I said, a sci-fi story backdrop, a cast of characters that you'll fall in love with or hate, depending on who they are. You'll love to fall in hate with them. Does that make any sense? Anyway, this game is so fucking clever, both in its story, its execution, and its gameplay, moment-to-moment gameplay. So, hidden roles. If fucking think, I mean, generally Touchstone now amongst kids is gonna be Among Us, but think like werewolf, whatever this fucking called, where people have different roles, but it's all done single player against computer-controlled enemies through the cast. And if you've played any game like that, you kind of know that there are certain rules. It'll slowly introduce different roles to that'll change how games go. But basically the backdrop is you are attempting to find out who is infected with Nosia. That's what the title of the game is called, which is like an alien virusy bug type situation. Again, I'm gonna be vague, and it's also almost a year since I played it. But about the story, so think you're like, oh well, so you have to cast, just like in Among Us, where you gotta. I've never played Among Us, but like you gotta cast the bad person out into space or whatever the fuck thing is. You gotta freeze the person who's infected with nausea. And so you play rounds of this game, this hidden role game, where you're trying to do it. Now, you're like, Austin, how does that make sense? Like, social deduction hidden role games only work because you're playing with people, and you go in with certain biases already, and you know these people, and they're going to try hard to defend themselves. Or this game pulls it off. I was skeptical at first, but pulls off the single player aspect of this so well, because not only is it a visual novel, not only is it a social deduction game, but it's also part like RPG. And by that, I mean there are stats and there are skills that you learn. And much like, think, the best way I can describe it is think like in D&D, when you roll and you have stats and you're trying to hit like your hit chance against an enemy's armor class. It has that kind of system. There are different stats, but basically, not only are you playing where you're trying to guess certain things and how characters are reacting to certain accusations, or defending themselves, or defending others, and all this different thing, and the myriad of things you can do, whether it's defending someone, accusing someone, backing someone up, defending yourself, all these different things. It comes down to occasionally a check of stats. So if you have, I forget what all the stat names are, I'm sure they've been popping up on the screen potentially as footage has been going on, but like if your ability to catch a lie gets set off because someone else's lying ability sucks, but your intuition or whatever the stat is good, you'll get a little ping, and then you as a character know, that person's lying for whatever reason about what they did, either their role or what they did, or who they were, where they were, where the fuck. And you're like, now I know that they're lying, but obviously you can't just go to a computer character and be like, I know they're lying. You can try to tell them that you know that they're lying, but they don't have to necessarily believe you, because that's how social deduction games work. So there's the stats, and then there's the skills, and then you're basically, the first half of the game is you're just constantly, like me, I was just wanting to win. I was just no matter what my role was, because they're randomly chosen, up to a point, you're like, I just want to win. I want to win. I want to beat this guy. If I'm the bad guy, I'm going to win. If I'm the good guy, I'm going to win. And you level up that way. You level up when you play the game, so you just play these loops. It is a looping game, in a sense. Again, I'm not going to spoil too much, but like, it loops narratively what happens, and basically how it sets up how you're playing round after round after round of this game. It does clever things throughout it. The other thing where it excels in being a single player experience is that not only do all the enemies also have stats, and those level up at different rates. So some characters are just known to be really good at sussing out lies, or whatever the case is, or they're hard-headed and they're fucking annoying because they suck, or whatever the case is. Like, there's the best example I can give, and I won't say who it is exactly, but there's a character in this game who's just, not only do they have stats, but they have like personal tendencies. So this character, let's say, he's just, you come to learn that he is just a bad liar. Like, he's just so bad at lying. Not only is he bad at lying, but he also loves to lie. He lies like his life is dependent on it, round after round after round. And so people find out that he's lying all the time. He's usually like one of the first people out, because people are like, you're lying, we know you're lying, stop lying. And then they'll just like either know that he's lying, so they think he's bad, so they knock him out, or they're like, you're lying so much and you're obnoxious, we're just gonna kick you out either, which I'm a big fan of. Kick out the people that are annoying. So the way it excels then is that you're picking up on these tendencies. The game knows you're picking up on the tendencies. It'll sometimes expressly tell you like, hey, this character is bad at lying, and this character likes doing certain things. But like, going back to my this example character that I'm making up at the time, not only does he is he bad at lying and lies so frequently, but also you end up learning that he's got a little crush on a certain other character in the ship, and he is willing to defend that person at the expense of his own life. So you're constantly then, if he ever backs up that person, then you as a player will be like, I'll take whatever he says about this person with a grain of salt. Or if he's defending them constantly, then, or going to bat to them hard for a certain reason, I know to maybe take it with more of a grain of salt. Much like reflecting real life, if you were playing a hidden role game with friends or people you know, potentially if you're playing with, I don't know, a couple, and you know for whatever reason that they maybe coming into the game, they would defend each other because, of course, they're playing together and they know each other the best, and they wouldn't want to, I'm just making up an example, but like they would go in and they'd be like, well, we're together and we're through thick and thin, we'll fucking defend each other for whatever reason. It builds up that same thing, where in this game, this character is infatuated with another character, so they're always going to defend him, and then you have that in the back of your head. And then there's like a definitive halfway point in this game where then two things happen, mostly. One, mentality shift of the player. You go, hey, I don't care just about winning. I want to unfold more of the story. I want to see what's going on. I want to see what's going on, what's the backstories of these characters, what the hell is happening with this sci-fi like story backdrop, all this, whatever. And then you also learn that the story advances by meeting certain conditions. Again, speaking quite vaguely, a condition of you have to be the bad role, and you have to occupy a bad role. So like, let's say you're infected by the nausea, and then you have to get to the end of the game. That's a very basic one, but think something along those lines. Or you are there's many roles that end up being able to be taken throughout this game, but say like, yeah, you have to be a good guy and you have to make it to a certain round, or more cleverly, you have to be a good guy and also this other specific character has to make it to the end with you, and you guys have to win. And then you're like, the light bulb clicks. You're like, oh, so getting back to my example of the character who sucks and is constantly lying, think of it like this. You have to unlock the next bit of story. You have to not only worry about yourself winning, but you have to essentially drag this ball and chain character to the end with you. And this is where it starts being really clever, because you're like, fuck, I don't have to worry just about my own stats and my own ability to defend myself. I have to then get the heat off of him. I have to either intentionally lie or just try to protect him from himself. I need to make it so that he makes it to the end with me, even though he sucks ass. We've all agreed he sucks and he's bad at this game. And so then that's where the clever part this comes, is like the third aspect to this game. Again, this is not spoilery, but you get to about the midway point or somewhere before that, but really the mind shift happens at that midway point. There's a definitive midpoint when I was playing where I was like, oh, this game, I'm thinking about it differently. I'm not just concerned about me just winning a game of a hidden role game. Is that you then get, at a certain point through the game, the ability to assign roles and control all the rule set of the next round of the hidden role game, to try to not make it easier for you to drag that character through to the end, but to set up certain conditions to have it to unlock that next bit of story. So like I said, the most easiest example is I have to be a good guy. This character who sucks at lying and is bad at the game has to be a good guy, and we have to make it to the end. So you have the ability to set yourself, your own role, however you want to play, as the good guy, and you get to set the roles, the potential hidden roles of other characters, and then also the amount of characters, because you can play with up to like a large amount of number of characters. You can also shrink the amount of number of characters. That ends up being like a big aspect to the game. But so then you're intentionally trying to set conditions to where you do that. So like I said, you would have to potentially get The get this shitty character to the end with you, and if you fail, then you're not going to get it. Or you can get a character that's just like a dick to everyone else, and you have to get them to not self-implode constantly through their actions and their words and their deeds. Or there's some roles where it's like you're, I forget what it would be in an actual role game, but like you're the ultimate bomb character and not the evil character, and you're not the good guy either, but you just need to make it to the end without getting found out. And so you got to get to the end with that. And then there's people that assist that bomb role. And it's just so clever in how it's built. So where you're constantly like, ugh, I'm not just worried about myself. I'm worried. It's like as if you were playing a hit and roll game and you went in with a friend and you were like, hey, I'm going to not only succeed, but I'm going to drag my friend to the end of the game as well. And no matter what his role is, and this is going to be an unlock condition to see more of the story, and the story slowly unfolds. And like I said, there's an overarching story, then there's characters' backstory. You find the range of the different types of characters and their backstories is super fascinating. There's like mini stories hidden within the game because the characters' backstories, although you don't need to know it, are actually super interesting and part of like this larger narrative about the universe the game has set up. And then, much like I was talking about with 1,000 Times Resist, this game, I was like, this is super fun. I had fun in the early game. I'm having fun in this mid game. I was so concerned that it wasn't, for a different reason than 1,000 Times Resist, but I was concerned that the game wasn't going to be able to stick its landing. But it was so clever and so excellent, I thought, where it pulled off its ending so well. And again, just like 1,000 Times Resist, but for a different reason, a game whose ending and the process leading up to it, and just how, again, 1,000 Times Resist, that story is going to stick with me. And that narrative, that storytelling is going to stick with me. Noja's story is going to stick with me, for sure. But also on a gameplay level, when we talk about a video game and how it's built to have that moment-to-moment gameplay, I'm also going to think on it on that level as well. So not only on just the story-wise, but also how clever it's built and took what should be reserved for a multiplayer or a multi-person, real-person experience, how it was able to build a social deduction experience into a single-player visual novel, mostly setting and environment. Just clever all the way around, from story to execution to gameplay. It's very funny because I played this at the top of the year, and then like a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, they announced, it was just a random announcement that there's going to be an anime adaptation to this game, which I would have high hopes is interesting to watch. I would be definitely interested in seeing that if and when that comes out. I'm also, it's the type of thing where like I'm now super excited to see the next game, whatever their next game is after Noja, just to see what it is. Like I said, the hardest I've gone to probably bat for a #1 game here, in my, as I said at the top, like my 6th year doing this type of list, the hardest I would go to bat for a game at my #1 spot to try to get more people to play. It's on PC, it's on Switch, I believe, as well. As far as I understand, I don't think it goes on sale too often. But I highly recommend, however much it costs to buy and play. I will go to bat to this game so often, and it's one of those games where if you play it and you're like, oh, I don't like it, I either think you're lying or you're just bad. I don't know. One of those two things, because yeah, Noja is just excellent. Excellent game. Wish I would have played it a year or two ago when it came out, or whenever it was, but glad I actually gave it a chance here and played it, because easily my #1 game of the year. And I think, looking at my previous year's games, this bucks the trend. I think I've had a game that released the year that I made the video each year at the end of the year. My #1s have always been a game that came out that year. This now, in year number 6, is the first time a game that came out a year or two prior I actually played, but it's at the top of this list. It's that strong. Because even I generally would want to put a game that's representative of the year that I'm making the video, but this is just so strong, such a strong contender. Like I said, I maybe didn't even explain it that well. And my pitch in my head while I was in the shower this morning, the pitch in my head for this game felt a lot more thorough. And I thought I'd be maybe a bit more convincing. But yeah, like I said, it is such a good game. It's on the longer side, a little bit on the longer side, but that's just because you're going to be playing many rounds of the hidden role game, because you have to succeed doing certain things. That would be my one like slight knock, or my not even a knock for me, because I had fun playing the hidden role part of the game, but I could see other people getting hung up on just how often you have to do like rounds of the game, and some people might not have the patience for that or anything. But I would say push through it, play it. Highly recommend. Like I said, I want more people to play this game. It is that well crafted, to the point where, like, I don't know, if you watch this video and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna try this game because Uncle recommended me to play this game, come back to this video, let me know you played it. Or I don't know, if you see me walking down the street, who the fuck is gonna see me walking down the street? But stop me at any point and tell me that you played the game because of my recommendation, and that you enjoyed it, and that I had a good opinion on the game, and hopefully you also have a good opinion on the game, because it's that good. It's a tight story, super interesting, finishes and sticks to the landing super well. I'm just going to keep saying the same things over and over again because I want to hammer home this point. Like I said, play this fucking game. Play this game in 2025, if you haven't already, because the people... The thing is, if you go online, I think there's obviously a dedicated small group of people that play this game. This isn't obviously the biggest well-known game or anything like that, but like, we're not numerous, but we're loud. We should be loud. We should be louder. More people should play this game. Play Noja. Let me know what you think, honestly. Please. Again, metaphorical hands and knees. I'm too old now at this point to actually get on my hands and knees for the bit, but I considered it. I considered doing it. That's how much I believe in this game. And I don't know what the dev team who made this, their next idea is going to be, but it's one of those things where I wrapped up this game and I said, whatever their next game is, no matter what type of game it is or what they do, if it's a Noja 2, I wouldn't think so. But if it's a Noja 2 or if it's anything else, I would be immediately, I'd be a day one player. So Noja, number 1 for games of 2024. And that does it for the top 10 games that I've played of 2024. I don't think I was able to keep it under an hour, unfortunately. Although I tried. I did not expand upon a lot of these games. If you're like, this is probably like, even for the last several years, probably the least I've expanded upon why a game is at where it's at, or talked about a game. I tried less. Again, didn't want to go into spoilery details. Didn't want to go too long on a game, so I didn't even like give like great pitches of what a game is or whatever. I trust, generally, I'm gonna trust your ability to, if any of my slight pitches for any of these games or video footage for the actual top 10 speaks to you, to do your own independent research on a game. But yeah, I super stand by this list. Like I said, the top 4 or 5 games could all be like number 1s on a different year, even considering like last year. But yeah, Noja definitely stands peak among those. But yeah, a super solid year for games. I've played too many games. 48, like I said, at the top of this list. That's a staggering looking number, all things considered, even if a lot of those were short one-off experiences. We will continue in 2025 because that's all I know how to do, what to do. Like I said, if you end up playing Noja, let me know. If you agree with any of my list, let me know. If you disagree with my list, don't let me know. I don't give a shit. Put that message in a bottle, put it in the water. Maybe it'll come to me. I'm more likely to find it than that way. No, you do whatever you want. I don't care. That's it for the video. Like I said, I think this is, once I edit it down, it's gonna be about an hour and a half or maybe a little under. Damn, couldn't keep it under an hour. Unfortunate. But it is what it is. I hope some of the video, at least some of it, was understandable. I'm bad at rambling sometimes. Clearly, I don't have a script. Could you imagine if I was talking like this and I did have a script? Then there would be a problem. Anyway, that's it. I gotta get out of here. The days are gonna, the natural light is gonna start fading. Daylight savings time. Shooting schedule. Now I'm just saying things.